So you're ready to start a new city in Cities Skylines, but none of the maps you have really appeals to you, and you want to create something all your own. But where do you start? The map editor can be intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's possible to create some amazing things. In this video, I'll show you an easy way to make a realistic map totally vanilla with no mods needed. Although I am using visual mods, the map I'm making requires no DLCs or custom assets whatsoever. So let's get started. To make a truly realistic map, especially as a beginner, it's not recommended that you start from scratch. A cool thing about the map editor is it does let you import real-world height data, which you can get from this website. For this map, I'm using the area around Astoria, Oregon as the base, but you can pick anywhere in the world. The grid here is the bounds of all 81 in-game tiles, and the center section is the 25 available vanilla tiles. Once you've picked your starting location, click this button here to save the raw height data as a PNG file. If you're so inclined, you can also download the satellite image and roadmap of the area for future reference. Next, we need to take a quick look at the image file itself. So it's a grayscale PNG, and the brighter the shade, the higher the terrain will be once you import it in-game. And we need to prepare it for import, or else the game might not catch all of the more subtle details. You can use any image editing software, but I'm using GIMP. And what I'm doing here is just turning up the exposure a little bit so that the lower elevation coastlines and river are more visible. Once I'm done with that, I'll just click export as and save it as a new file. Now we'll need to move this file to a specific location. I'll go ahead and provide the exact file path in the description, but it's in the game's data folder under Addons, MapEditor, and then Heightmaps. Paste the file into this directory and let's load up the game. In the map editor, click Import Heightmap, and your file should show up in the list. As soon as you select it, it'll automatically populate the terrain into the world. There won't be any water at first, and there's a couple of ways to get water on the map. We'll start by adding water sources and then setting the game to the highest speed so the water starts flowing. You can also adjust sea level, which will fill all areas below the level shaded in white with water. However, it's not always perfect, and some rivers won't fill up. For that, we'll need to manually place water sources along the path of the river, using the same technique to set the level of the water source, and then you can also adjust the capacity of the water source. It takes a bit of practice to know which setting to use, but for the narrower rivers, I usually adjust the strength down to where the water source is about as wide as the river itself. Water flows downhill, so it's a best practice to place water sources at the highest elevation of where you want a river to start flowing. Sometimes height maps are imperfect, and we'll have weird bits where rivers don't quite connect, and areas where the resolution of the height map isn't great and looks really digital. You can use the soften tool to smooth these areas out and make them look a bit more natural. Often these weird bits are due to the data mistaking man-made structures like bridges or docks for hills and coastlines. So be sure to check your map everywhere for any parts that look artificial and just smooth them out. Water sources placed will only fill up an area where the terrain is lower than the water source itself. For lakes, you will need to manually place a water source in each one of them you make, as they won't fill up automatically with the sea level feature. Although real cities are often built on quite hilly terrain, the scale of the height map isn't always perfect for the game, and you'll need to improvise a bit to make the map more playable. I'm extending the coastline of this peninsula quite a bit and leveling out these areas that in real life are piers, but the game recognized as land, using it to give myself a bit more flat buildable terrain. Another trick I like to do when extending out coastlines is to come back with a small size brush at a lower strength and define it a bit more so it looks natural. Now that it appears that the sea level has filled up this large bay, we don't need quite as many water sources. A big mistake that I made in my previous map editor tutorial video was to place in way too many water sources, which worked, but it created these weird ripples in the water.
If you think you've used enough, go back and add twice as many.
And Bonbon V was kind enough to point that out for me. We're not going to make the same mistake this time, so I'm removing most of the water sources in the main bay. Next, it's important to add trees. Because this is a Pacific Northwest map, I'm blanketing the hillsides and coasts with lots of evergreen trees like boreal pines and conifers. You'll also want to place natural resources like ore, fertile land, and oil, so if you choose to do so, you'll have spaces for your various specialized industries. Be sure to place at least some of the resources within reach of the 25 center tiles if you're playing without the 81 tiles mod, and to enable your map to be played by all players if you decide to share it. Creating beaches is another thing that many players struggle with. The height map didn't really spawn this beach correctly, So I'm using the Soften tool and right-clicking it to feather it down into the water for a gradual slope, and then adding in some sand and wild grasses nearby. Along the Oregon coast, many beaches are usually beneath an elevated area, either dunes or a high bluff. So to mimic this effect, I'm raising the terrain at a very light strength, left-clicking with various different brush sizes, and then coming back and softening it up. After that's done, I'm expanding the beach out a bit more and repeating the process of sloping it into the water again to make it look more natural. Another fun thing we can do in the map editor is add props. I thought this little lighthouse scene was quite cute and brought some life into the map. You'll also need outside connections, such as airplane routes and ship routes, to ensure planes and ships can visit your city. And you will also need to have at least 2 highway connections on your map, and be sure to bring them into your desired starting tile in the center of the map, or else you won't be able to play it without mods. For rail connections, I like to at least bring them 1 tile away from my desired start tile, as they're usually not unlocked until you reach a milestone that allows you to buy a new tile. So to allow for a bit more freedom in the starting square, I usually don't bring train lines all the way across the map. To know if your map will function correctly in-game, you can click that red chirper on the top and he will give you a checklist of everything needed and recommended. Next, you'll need to select which of the 25 tiles that you want to be your starting tile. Default is the center, but for this one, I wanted to start at the peninsula where the highway comes in. After this, take a screenshot of your map, name it, and save it. If you want to upload the map to Steam to share with other players, just come to the Content Manager and find it here. To add a custom thumbnail, click this little folder button. It'll open up a directory where everything is saved. The thumbnail will be named previewimage.png. I've made a thumbnail for Steam and Canva, so I download it and I drag it to the folder, deleting the original preview and renaming this one to the exact same name. Also, for best results, make sure your thumbnail is 512 by 512 pixels, or it may look a little weird in the Steam Workshop previews. From there, just click Publish and your map will be live on the workshop. After I saved this map, I loaded it up and adjusted the theme mix for the cinematics, which I will upload to Steam along with the map itself and link it in the description if you want to play on it. Up next, if you haven't already, check out this beginner's guide. It'll show you how to start a new city and learn the basics of the game. So click here to watch, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos.